Hi, I'm Paul Edwards, author of the Mourner's Woods books, and first and foremost, a monster kid. Tonight I'm reading Monster Fantasy Magazine, issue number 4 from 1975. I thought some of you might enjoy flipping through this vintage magazine with me. Together, let's see what kinds of monster kid goodness is in here. Monster Fantasy Magazine, issue number 4 from 1975. On the cover, we've got, of course, Robbie the Robot. We got the Metaluna Mutant, or as they kept saying in the movie This Island Earth, Mutant. We've got the Invaders from Mars boss alien. We've got Gort from The Day the Earth Stood Still. Of course, we've got Flash Gordon and Ming the Merciless. And Michael Rennie. All right, brace yourselves. It's going to be a space monster book. That for karate, okay. All right, let's see what we get in this issue. You get space monsters. You get the Horror Hall of Fame. Ooh, Lionel Atwill. Laird Krieger. Alfred Hitchcock. You know, I'm not too sure that Alfred Hitchcock made any pure horror movies except for Psycho and the Birds. Most of his movies I would categorize more as suspense. You know, maybe Frenzy. Frenzy might count. Oh, Barbarella. We're all over the place here. We're going from the silent film Phantom of the Opera to Barbarella. All right, let's get going. The Stepford Wives. Oh, this is upcoming horror movies. Some of which seem to have never come to fruition. Some of which did happen, like Andy Warhol's Dracula. Earthquake, famous disaster movie. Holy Wednesday, I've never heard of. If you have, let me know in the comments, but I don't know that one. Stepford Wives, of course, I know. House on Skull Mountain was a voodoo movie. Of course, the Texas Chainsaw Massacre happened. Trilogy of Terror happened. That's 3 stories that all star Karen Black. The Yakuza, I don't know that one. That doesn't mean it didn't happen. All right. Oh, way more. The Towering Inferno, of course, happened. Son of Dracula, starring Ringo Starr. I have no idea. I got nothing. I've got nothing. If you know what that is, let me know. Young Frankenstein, of course, happened. It's Alive. Jaws. So you have some of the biggest movies of the 1970s side by side with pictures that either didn't happen or maybe were released under a different name. The Monster Fantasy Bookshelf. All right, you hardly ever get this. An article on Laird Krieger. The tragic life of Hollywood's haunted Jack the Ripper. In Hangover Square, 1945, Krieger played a schizophrenic composer compelled to murder every time he hears a wrong note. This was Laird Krieger's first film, Hudson's Bay. Oh boy. All right, brace yourselves for the Space Monster book. Oh man. Invasion of the BEMs. Do you know what BEMs stands for? If you're a true monster kid, you should. The BEMs. Bug-eyed monsters. Invasion of the bug-eyed monsters. That's an old expression. You can be forgiven if you don't know that one. That's from, like, you know, the days of pulp science fiction. There's Click 2 from The Day the Earth Stood Still. Here in the text, it's giving us a history of space movies. It's talking about films like The Thing. There's Gort from The Day the Earth Stood Still. War of the Worlds, the 1953 War of the Worlds, which was a big budget George Pal extravaganza, and was very good. How to make a spaceship. Look, they're going to make one of the Martian invasion ships from War of the Worlds. There's the finished product. Yikes. Now, when I was a kid, in the 70s, this movie was on TV a lot. And the Martians were pretty scary. Here's a little fact for you. You remember Mystery Science Theater 3000? Well, in the original seasons of Mystery Science Theater, the bad guy was named after this character in War of the Worlds. Dr. Forrester. I was really creeped out by the Martian when I was a kid. Other invasions. All right, this is one of my favorite behind the scenes pictures. You know Earth versus the Flying Saucers? Check this out. Look closely. This is a behind the scenes picture. The actress has drawn a smiley face on the horrifying space monster's helmet. He looks a lot friendlier that way, doesn't he? Invaders from Mars, of course. A lesser known, somewhat lesser known, 1950s science fiction picture, It, The Terror from Beyond Space, is a movie about a spaceship that has a monster that has sneaked on board, unbeknownst to the crew, and is slowly killing them off one by one. Sound vaguely familiar? It sounds like the premise of Alien, doesn't it? Space monsters aboard the ship. It's on the loose. It's killing off the crew members one at a time. Sort of a precursor to the movie Alien, but with no face huggers, though. Oh, Mario Bava's Planet of the Vampires. If I remember right, that's from the year I was born, 1965. That is a stunning movie visually. I won't give away the big plot twist in it, but basically it combines vampire lore with science fiction setting. This is the man from Planet X, and I cannot tell you who the actor is who plays the man from Planet X. Not because I don't know, but because Nobody knows. They didn't credit the actor in the end credits of the movie. And there are two competing rumors going around Hollywood about who the actor actually was. So we don't know for sure who played the man from Planet X. That's an appropriate mystery for a character called the Man from Planet X, don't you think? This is also a movie that blended horror elements and science fiction elements pretty well, although on a much lower budget than these other ones. "5 Million Years to Earth" is, if you're watching it in another country besides the United States, you may know this film under a different title. This is one of the Quatermass movies. Professor Quatermass was a hero in a series of science fiction stories, and he had several movies. In the United States, this was released as 5 Million Years to Earth. And I've said before, this is the most Doctor Who thing that has ever existed that wasn't actually a Doctor Who production. But it has Doctor Who vibes like you wouldn't believe. Quatermass to the rescue. Of course, Forbidden Planet. One of the great matte paintings from Forbidden Planet. I love when they're going around in the Krell City and you can just get the sense of how titanic the city is. A story in pictures of this island Earth. They're starting out with two pictures where the monsters attacking two of the main characters. Neither one of these scenes actually happened in the movie. These were publicity images. I cannot look at the Metaluna mutant, the monster in this film, without remembering how all through the movie, everybody kept insisting on calling him the mutant. That's how they said it, mutant. Okay, this is still the article on space movies, but now we're on to the TV invasion. Well, Superman is a space creature, technically. It's not a monster, except in Brightburn. But he is a space creature, so I guess that counts. Oh, yeah. Remember this episode of The Twilight Zone? With the old woman in the farmhouse that's being attacked by little teeny space invaders. That's probably one of my 5 favorite Twilight Zone episodes. That's a really good one. And I like this one a lot. This episode. This is another Twilight Zone. People are the same all over. Oh. Now, The Outer Limits, I don't think ever had an episode without a monster. I'm pretty sure. Oh, no, they did. The 100 Days of the Dragon. Okay, but other than the 100 Days of the Dragon, I think every episode of The Outer Limits had a monster in it. Some were kind of freaky. Like this guy came from another dimension. I remember him. Under all this, is Simon Oakley, who played Carl Kolchak's boss, Mr. Vincenzo, on Night Stalker. The Zonti Misfits. I don't have my favorite one, though. My favorite one is the one from the Architects of Fear. Oh. All right. When we were kids, watching Star Trek in reruns when this original Star Trek was the only Star Trek show. We used to talk about this guy as the Tyrannosaurus guy. We could never remember his name, but it was the Tyrannosaurus guy. Now I know, though, it's the Gorn. This was creepy as anything, that salt vampire. I saw Gene Roddenberry came and spoke on my college campus when I was in college in the 80s. But he was the only Star Trek luminary that I ever saw in person. Oh yeah, remember these? Oh, now to completely change tone, Barbarella. I've read that they're going to remake this. I don't know why. Well, I do know why. Money. But artistically, I don't know why. I don't know why they wouldn't just leave it as is. I can't imagine what they're going to do that's any different. All right. Lionel Atwill, maddest of the mad scientists. He often played a mad scientist. I don't know how that became his niche, but it is. Even when he wasn't the bad guy, he was still a mad scientist. Like in Dr. X, he was still a mad scientist. He just wasn't the criminal. Yep. Inspector Krogh from Son of Frankenstein, one of his more famous roles. When I was a kid, I thought that when he played a police inspector in a later Frankenstein movie, that he was still supposed to be the same character. But it turned out he wasn't. Oh, Charlie Chan. Sidney Toler version, Charlie Chan. Warner Oland played Charlie Chan in a ton of movies, and then when he died, Sidney Toler took over and played the role in a bunch of movies. And then when he died, Roland Winters took over. And they had this weird thing going where the movies got cheaper and cheaper, especially during the third guy's time. The movies got cheaper and cheaper in terms of budget, but the stories actually got more and more complicated. Anyway, here's Lionel Atwill in that one. And here he is in Man-Made Monster, again, mad scientist. The Charlie Chan one is another one where he was a mad scientist, but not the bad guy. Okay. I've noticed that in horror fandom, you're always learning something new. I learned something just recently that I never knew before. The 1920s Phantom of the Opera, the silent one that we all know with Lon Chaney, was not the first Phantom of the Opera film. I didn't know that. I did not know that. There is a lost earlier Phantom of the Opera film. So this is the oldest surviving Phantom of the Opera film, but it is not I've been calling it the original Phantom of the Opera for years, and now I can't because there was one that came before this. So, see, learn something new all the time. But I'm sure that whatever was in the previous one cannot top Lon Chaney Sr. as the Phantom of the Opera. And if you've never caught this picture, you can find it on my Silent Horror Films podcast on my channel on YouTube. Some of the most famous poses of the Phantom. So now we're switching. Okay, this is, up to here is the Lon Chaney Phantom of the Opera from 1925. Now we come to the Claude Rains version from the 1940s. And then we're jumping ahead to the Herbert Lom version in the 1960s. And now we're on to Alfred Hitchcock. Okay, so I said earlier in the video, I think the only Hitchcock films that are purely horror are Psycho, The Birds, and I guess you would count Frenzy. Do you think I'm right, or do you think I'm overlooking one? If you think that there's another Hitchcock that's pure horror, let me know. But of course, the lion's share of his movies were suspense and mystery. I especially like Shadow of a Doubt. That's a good one. And I like the newer version of The Man Who Knew Too Much. You know, he remade his own movie, The Man Who Knew Too Much. The 30s one is okay, but I really like the 50s one. Oh, cool. We've gotten onto the Wild Toys. Oh, and look, we're hitting a whole bunch of Star Trek ones right out of the gate. I had this, the Enterprise bridge model. And I had the Enterprise, and I had the Klingon ship. I did not have the Romulan ship. And I did not have any of the phasers or tricorders or anything. I wonder if this was the phaser one. One of these handheld phaser toys shot these red discs so that if you sort of squinted, it looked like a red energy bolt coming out of the gun. Monster masks. Amazing Magical Mysteries. If you've ever seen any of my videos before, you probably know that I have this poster up in my home office. This guy cracks me up. Wow. All right, we should send away for our bloody bargains. All right, this deserves a closer look. Yeah, I gotta say, I would take the monster, 7-foot-tall monster. Let's get that. Either that or the monster ghost. Sheesh, what did they do to this guy? It's like they chopped them all up. Listen, if you enjoy vintage horror and classic monsters, check out my book series, the Mourner's Woods books. I'm a self-published author. I'm self-published on Amazon, and I've written a series of stories that all take place in a haunted forest, Mourner's Woods. They're all standalone stories. Each one has a completely different cast of characters entering Mourner's Woods, and they encounter a different wild threat in each book. Monsters, ghosts, banshees, and the like. My name again is Paul Edwards. My books are the Mourner's Woods books. Thanks for taking some time and looking through Monster Fantasy Magazine issue number 4 with me. I'll see you in Mourner's Woods.